We'll be joined shortly by Kim Stout from Helena, and she and I have been doing these webinars together since this fall, and we've been doing one every month. This is the last one of the school year, and this is really just intent for people who have not yet begun the national board process and are interested in learning a little bit about what it's all about in order to decide if it's something you want to pursue in the near future. And I'm joined tonight by one of our other ambassadors, and that's Christy Gaines. Christy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Gaines. I'm in Bozeman, and I certified in 2017.
What was your certificate?
Early Childhood Generalist.
Okay. And I was the Early and Middle Childhood Literacy and Language Arts. And that at the time I was teaching kindergarten and first grade, and so literacy was just everything I was doing, and so that just felt like the best fit for me. And Kim also has the same certificate, and she and I certified the same year, and she's in Helena. My role has changed a little bit. I'm no longer working for the public school district. I work for Montana PBS, and I do professional development for teachers on behalf of the PBS station, but I've still been able to work closely with MFPE to support national board certification. So the first thing we want to do is just explain what is, I should go back. You see, I have this little URL, bit.ly/NBC Webinar. And if you want to write that down or copy and paste it into your browser, and this is just the slides that I'm going to go through tonight. And there are a few links in there, and there's some things that if you're thinking about it later and you want to go back and reference, you can go ahead and have this to refer to. And as I said, we are recording this, and that is so that if you wanted to go back and watch a certain part of it again, just because you had a question that you forgot the answer to, or if you just want to relive the whole amazing event, then you also have that option. So has everybody got that link? Okay,
I do, yeah.
All right. So National Board Certification is a independent nonprofit organization. It's been around since 1987. And it is an organization that has been devoted to establishing high standards for the field of education and providing this professional development opportunity for teachers to pursue some sort of higher certification that exemplifies great content knowledge and expertise. What's my thing here? This is voluntary. This is something teachers choose to do on their own time, and hopefully with the support of their school districts. It was originally developed to continue or give teachers the opportunity to fine-tune their skills, and it's meant as a way to retain and recognize accomplished teachers. Basically, it's got committees of educators have come together to establish standards for teaching and to create certificates of specialty across the field of education. When you finish your portfolio, it's submitted to a board of your peers to review. Some of them are also board certified and some of them are not, but they are all educators, which is something that was important to me when I started this. It is used by many school systems as a basis for retaining teachers or rewarding them, or a lot of districts brag about the number of board certified teachers they have. I heard there were realtors in Billings bragging about the number of board certified teachers they had in the school district as a way to sell houses in certain neighborhoods. So it's a lot of people understand it to be the highest level of achievement in classroom instruction. Nationally, there are 112,000 teachers who have achieved certification, and about 50% of those teachers are currently in high need schools, and that's good because the mission was to improve the quality of teaching in high need schools. A lot of schools currently have teachers working together in teams to pursue certification, and if that's something that's possible for you, I would highly recommend it, because it really is better to do this together. 81% of Americans believe that board certification beyond licensure it should be achieved. And, you know, a lot of professions, especially in the medical field, all have this kind of recognition for expertise in the field. And so I think it's important that educators do as well. In Montana, we have 141 national board certified teachers. And then of that 141, 29 of us have stepped into a leadership role to promote national board certification throughout the state. One of those things is what we're doing right now with the ambassador program. Several of us have learned to do this little dog and pony show, both in person and online, in just an effort to share the program with teachers. Another program that we will talk about a little bit later that Christy's here to share about is Jumpstart, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a 2-day experience to help jumpstart being part of this or doing this process. And then Homestretch is a relatively new program, but it's intended to help you finish up your portfolio and submit everything and make sure you don't miss anything. This is the distribution of national board certified teachers throughout the state of Montana. You can see where we're really strong. Our numbers are really high in Billings and in the Helena and Great Falls and Bozeman areas. And here in central Montana, not a lot in eastern Montana. And some of it is because even teachers who have been teaching for a long time don't know much about the process. And so that has been the reason for these webinars, is to just raise awareness and have teachers start thinking about it. We know that when teachers commit to board certification and when they achieve that their students do better in school, and that their test scores go up and their confidence goes up and classroom teaching improves. And so that's our biggest reason for promoting national board certification. It allows you to hone your practice. It is the best professional development you can do, in my opinion, because it's completely personalized to you and your teaching setting, your students in your classroom. You spend a year immersing yourself, or 2 or 3, or however long it takes, immersing yourself in these learners in this setting. What do they need? How do I make sure they get what they need? And what do I do next? It's challenging because it forces you to look really closely at things that you do naturally that you didn't think were powerful instructional decisions. It's a different kind of writing. It's not descriptive or poetic. It's describe, analyze, and reflect. And the more succinct you can be, the better. You do have a page count that you have to stick to. It can be frustrating, especially when you're trying to get your videotaped stuff and trying to make sure you can hear the kids' voices on the video. So those are the pieces that are challenging. And I just talked to a teacher recently who submitted her portfolio, and she said, I am a changed teacher because of this. I am better at what I do because I had to look at my practice and break it down into the pieces and prove that what I was doing was working or wasn't working. So it's hard to quantify the change that we feel when we certify, that when we accomplish this, but I truly can mark my career in half before certification and after certification. Would you say the same, Christy?
I would, definitely.
When you are board certified, you are recognized as an expert, and you will be asked statewide to be a part of more leadership opportunities. You don't have to say yes, but it is an opportunity to step into the role as a teacher leader and help your peers in different ways. You may be asked to be a leader within your school or your district or across the state or even at the national level. And a lot of doors open once you achieve certification. So this is the path that the National Board feels that we follow as educators, that we start as pre-service teachers and move into the professional teacher. And once we become board certified, we step into that teacher leader position. Kim and I always say we're not really sure it follows this exact path, because a lot of us are teacher leaders before we pursue board certification, and it's an interest in board certification that comes as a result of that leadership. So this doesn't necessarily have to be everyone's path, but it is the framework that the National Board has noticed in their research. So the five core propositions is like the meat of everything National Board. Everybody who certifies is trying to write and prove that these 5 elements exist in their day-to-day practice. These are things I absolutely know every single person on this call is already doing, and that you could probably point to a handful of things that you did just this week that is an example of these 5 things living in your classroom. The trick then is making sure that the assessors who read your writing can see that as well. And so the 5 propositions they're research-based. They appear in all professional development in some form or another. The first one is that you're committed to your students and their learning, which means, of course, students are the first thing we think about when we do this, and we do everything we can to move the needle on where these individual kids are and how to show growth from each year. So they'll be looking for language in your writing that shows that you know what your students need and how to get them where they need to go. Then they know their subjects and how to teach those subjects. So this is the part of the portfolio which is actually a test that you have to take. And depending on the certificate that you pursue, you'll have a computer-based content assessment that you will have to take to prove that you know your content at a deeper level, not just what it is, but the pedagogy behind how to teach it well. Managing and monitoring student learning. So this is all about assessing. I see I have a question up, so I'm going to bring that up and stop. Is there a study guide for the content area tests? Great question. At this point, no, there isn't a study guide, but there are sample questions on the website, and it'll give you like the framework for what to expect from those questions. They're mostly essay-based questions. My test in the literacy component gave me some student work to analyze, gave me some student writing gave me a running record that I had to then say what I was going to do with the results of that running record. Christy, what was your test like?
So you'll hear us talk about before the changes and after the changes. I certified after the National Board did a lot of rewriting, and so my test looked a little different. Half of it was the essay type questions, very similar to what you were doing. And then I also had, I believe it was 45 multiple choice questions. And they weren't your typical multiple choice questions. They were still very analytical, and in most cases, all 4 answers seemed like they could be right. So it did take a lot of reading for the understanding of what they were really trying to get at.
How did you prepare for that test? Did you have study materials that you used?
You know, I did. I think I mentioned when most of you were on the call that I was early childhood, and so the majority of my experience was in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And so I did things like go and spend some time in our pre-K program, making sure that I knew about that end of my certification because I didn't have a lot of background. I did some reading. In my district, I don't teach health enhancement, but there were questions about health enhancement and music. So I spent some time with my health enhancement teacher and my music teacher, just watching what they were doing. And then I did a lot of reading of the standards, both our standards as a district and the standards that the National Board presents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the standards are everybody has their own standards for their content area, their certificate area, and those really do become your guidebook. That if you have a really good understanding of those standards, that's how you prepare for the test. I went through the practice questions with a colleague, and we took turns discussing, you know, how we would answer things. That's probably more of an answer to that question than always tend to over answer things. Proposition 4 is that we think systematically about our practice and learn from experience. And so this is about instructional decision making, and that's going to come out really strong in your writing as you're talking about why you chose certain materials, why you chose certain resources, why you chose to put students in certain groups. Again, this one overlaps with knowing your students and how to teach them, is just making really strong instructional decisions that you can back up with evidence from your classroom and what you know about your students. And then the last one is members of learning communities. And this is going to be a lot about how you collaborate with other professionals to improve your own practice and to come up with new and innovative ways to meet the needs of your students. This portfolio entry is going to weigh heavily on a project that exists perhaps outside of your classroom, on some of all that extra work that I know you do. You'll be wanting to find a way to connect families and communities to your work in the classroom, and that shows up in a lot of different ways. So this is how the 5 core propositions work together. You start at the bottom of this spiral here, and you get to know your students, who they are, what they need, what do you do to get them there. And then you make a plan. You set the goals, you figure out what the timeline is going to be, you implement it, you evaluate how they did, reflect on how effective it was or wasn't, and then set new goals. And so you're going to be describing this process within your entry. Here's what I did. Here's how I know it's going to work. Here's how I know it did or didn't work. And here's what I'm going to do next. So the 5 core props are one part of it, but then we take those propositions and we stretch them out into 25 different certificate areas. And this is where some of us have some decisions to make about which certificate we choose to pursue. And I say those of, like, for instance, I had the option of doing the certificate Christy did because I was an elementary school teacher. So I could have chosen the early childhood generalist certificate area. But I opted for the literacy, reading, language arts. If you're a high school history teacher, you probably should do social studies history in the high school area. When you're choosing your certificate, you want to pick an area that you're passionate about, something you can stick with for a couple of years. And you should be pretty secure in the fact that you're going to be teaching in that area for the next couple of years. If you're in a district that moves people around every few years, it would be important to talk with your principal or whoever does the moving around that you're planning to do this, because it could mean having to start over again if you're in a different age range or subject area. And I gave that advice to a teacher just last week who was trying to decide where to go, but I also knew she was interviewing in other districts. And I said, you should probably figure out where you're going to teach first and then pursue this so that you don't, get placed in a place outside of the certificate area that you started. You'll see that the age ranges are really broad. For instance, mine was for ages 3 through 12. So that does mean that I could expect on the assessment to have to answer questions about 3-year-olds as well as 12-year-olds. But it also means when my certificate is up for maintenance, we don't say expire, we say it's time, we don't recertify, we maintain the certificate. That's what that means. Mine's up for maintenance in 5 years or so. I still have to be teaching or have access to students within that grade level because you have to maintain your certificate in the same area. So it's nice that the age groups are as broad as they are. So once you've chosen your certificate area, you just have to make sure you have a bachelor's degree, you've been teaching for at least 3 years, you have a teaching license, and that you can prove that you are in fact teaching the area you want to get certified in. And I think there's a form your principal has to sign or something proving that. So the portfolio is broken up into 4 components, numbers 1 through 4. However, don't be confused by the way they've numbered them. You're not expected to do these in order. There's no order to this at all. In fact, component 1, which is the assessment, it is highly recommended that you save that for last, that you do components 2, 3, and 4, and after you've submitted those, then go for your assessment. The reason is once you've gone through the writing of your portfolio, you figured out national board writing. You figured out how to describe, analyze, and reflect. You have a really in-depth understanding of your standards, and that's going to help you perform on the assessment. Scores tend to come out around December. I got mine in November. I see them November, December, but you'll submit in the spring, wait on with bated breath all summer, and then find out sometime in the fall how you did. The first one is the content knowledge, and it's 3 constructed response items, 30 minutes to complete each one, and then 45 selected response items. You have no fewer than 60 minutes to do that. You do have to go to an official testing center in the room, and it's computer based. You can't take anything in the room with you, and it's very, very official. Then the second one is differentiating instruction. So this is going to be, you want to save many work samples as you can for over a period of time, and you want to find the student that you think has shown the most growth over that period of time, and you would analyze 2 pieces of work by the same student and really talk about how that student grew over time and what you did in order to lead to that student's growth. The next one is teaching practice and learning environment, and this is a video recording. When I certified, I had to do 2 videos. They've changed it, now you only have to do 1. When you're filming your class, I highly recommend setting up a camera in the back of your room and just filming all kinds of stuff without the intention to do anything with it. Just to get a feel for what's the noise level like, what's the light like, can I see everything, can I hear everything? And it gives the kids a chance to start ignoring the camera. It lets them, they can get their silliness out and, get weirded out by it. And then after a while, they don't even notice it anymore. You will have to video more than once and get several pieces and choose the one that you think shows the best, gives the best look. It has to be, I believe, 15 minutes of unedited continuous footage. So you can set up the camera for 45 minutes and trim on either end a 15-minute chunk, but you can't edit pieces together. It has to be continuous.
And Nikki, I'm going to interrupt for just a second because I did have to turn in 2 videos, so that may depend on your cert area, but I know generalist, you still have to do 2.
Okay, good to know. And I think the PE teacher I just helped might have also had to do 2 videos as well. We had to pick 2 pieces too. So thank you for interrupting on that.
Okay.
But then you submit a written commentary, again, sort of describing what happens. You put details like at 4 minutes and 22 seconds, the boy in the blue shirt did X, Y, or Z. And this is how I know that he learned this, that, or that. You have to be that detailed with what's happening in the film. And then the last one is the effective and reflective practitioner. So this is again showing evidence of how you collaborate with families or the community or other colleagues. This is maybe some kind of a community project you did. For me and mine, it was doing a series of family curriculum nights. So I had family math night and family reading night, and I gathered some evidence to show that these nights contributed to the student's achievement. I found this one to be really hard because I realized that I did a lot of extra stuff that I couldn't exactly completely point to student achievement, that I couldn't say my kids did better as a result of these activities, which helped me make some hard choices about some of the extra stuff that I did. And it also helped me to learn how to measure impact as well. Scoring occurs each summer. You get your scores released at the end of that year. The people who score your portfolio, each component is sent off to a different group of assessors in different parts of the country. The assessors are trained to assess that particular component. They're given a rubric and they just go through your entry with a rubric, scoring, and they're really looking for evidence of the standards in your writing and just showing places in your writing where the standards are there. So you can take these components in any order. You have up to 3 years to get all 4 of them in. You can do 1 a year or all 4 in 1 year. And they have to be completed within the cycle that you purchase them. So you would register with the National Board website and say, I plan to do component 3, and then you have to complete them, do that one within the year. And then you have 5 years to go through the process. If you submit it and you just don't score high enough, you'll be given the opportunity to retake until that 5 years is up, and then you have to do it all over again. So you can register, if you decide you want to do this, you want to register and pay the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards. You get on their website and set up an account and you pay them your registration fee. You submit between April and May, and you take your test in the spring between March and June, and then you wait for your scores sometime in December. So the big question is, what does this cost? You know, I know what I'm going to get out of it, but what am I going to have to put into it? So each component is $475 plus your $75 registration fee. So this kind of breaks it down. The faster you do it, the cheaper it is, because you only have to pay that $75 fee once. But if you take up to 3 years to do it, this is the most it can cost you. I can tell you that I did it in the time when it was expected that everybody just did it all in 1 year. I did not certify the first time. I was 6 points short, and I ended up having to go back and redo 2 of my components in order to get a score that did meet the requirement. And so since then, they've sort of changed the way they expect teachers to do this. When I did it, you had to pay for it all at one time and all in one big sum. And so there was a little bit more pressure. Now they've really tried to make it so that you could break it up into chunks and make it a little bit more manageable. You also get 60 OPI renewal units just for completing the process. So you can submit all 4 of your components, and the MFPE will send you the certificate for the 60 OPI units. So, and that's what you need to recertify in the state, which is a nice one too. Now there's a monetary benefit. We know that we can board certify so that our students do better, but you can also earn stipends from your school district and from the state. And depending on where you are, that dollar amount is different. If you're in a high needs school, you can earn more in a stipend per year. A lot of it depends on your school district and what they're willing to put up. If they're willing to give you a yearly stipend, then the state will match that, starting at $500 and up to $2,500, if I'm reading that right. But the details for that, you would need to either reach out to your school district or to MFPE, and they can tell you what your district pays and what your incentive could be. And this is for each year of the certificate. That's the other important thing, is that every single year of the 5 years that you are certified, you can expect this stipend. And then you would maintain your certificate, and it would continue after you showed that you had maintained your certificate, which is a really cool thing. So the next thing so the first thing you want to do is get onto the NBPTS website and read the candidate guide. And it's old fashioned, but I would just print it out and put it in a 3-ring binder and just have it at the ready, so you can circle things and sticky note things so that you know exactly what the details are, when the deadlines are, and what you're expected to do, and really start committing those standards for your certificate to memory. And then the next thing you can do is sign up for Jumpstart. And I'm gonna let Christy talk about Jumpstart.
Sure. Okay, so Jumpstart is, it's a 3-day training that happens every summer. In Montana, we offer it twice, once in Missoula and once in Billings. It's just a very comprehensive set of training that's really meant to support your certification process. During those 3 days, we take time to dive deeply into each of the 4 components and really talk about what you're going to be doing. We do a lot of planning about how you're going to meet those requirements. We do some scheduling of what your year might look like so that you don't end up crunched all at the end trying to get it done. One of I think the biggest benefits for me was getting to know other people from around the state. I didn't have anyone else in Bozeman at the time who was working on their early childhood, but meeting people from around the state who were doing that gave me a great resource to reach out to. And so those trainings happen. There'll be one in Billings this summer, June 26th through 28th, and one in Missoula, August 5th, 6th, and 7th.
So, and that's is a great, I mean, it's definitely worth your time to do this. And I think it makes a huge difference just to get you started right. And Chrissy, did you say what it costs?
Oh, I don't know that I did. Let me see if I can find those numbers quickly. I do know, what I can tell you is that it is considerably cheaper for people who are members of MFPE. It's $100 for MFPE members, and it's $400 for non-members.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's one of the great services you get.
Yeah. And you're doing one of those, right? You're teaching one?
I am. I'm teaching the one in Billings.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we've come to the end, and this is, if you have questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or if you want to drop them into the chat box, Christy and I can answer your questions.
I have one question. So I would be PE, which would be early. So the 3 to 12-year-olds.
Okay.
And then, like, I heard you say you had worked with a PE person. Is there somebody that you match up with that guides us? Because I always feel like PE is a little bit different animal than a lot of the other ones.
Yeah. That's the best part about going to Jumpstart, is you have the opportunity of finding someone who did your certificate. And since I know this teacher that just submitted, her name is Susan Atkinson, and she's in Livingston. And I would be happy to share her information with you, and you could talk with her. But we could also ask Marco to reach out to other teachers in the state that have also pursued that certificate.
Okay. And then wasn't there something, I think I read, like if you're going to do Jumpstart, you already have to be registered?
Yes, in order to print out and read through those 2 documents Nikki mentioned, you have to have paid your $75 registration fee. Mm-hmm. But we do recommend that maybe you don't start paying for components, because we'll talk so much about what those components are during Jumpstart. It may help you decide which one or ones to tackle your first year.
Okay, because that's kind of what was my question. It was like, how do you know how many you want to try to do if you don't even have an idea of what you're doing?
Yeah.
So
there are actually sections during Jumpstart when we do that. I don't know, it's changed a little bit since I did Jumpstart, but I know one of the tasks they had us do was to just write down all of our commitments, whether it was the fact that you have kids at home or whether you have extra job duties, and then based on that, make some educated decisions about how many components are realistic to tackle. Depending on your certificate, sometimes there are components that complement each other better than others. So those are all things we can dive into during Jumpstart. which is again why we recommend don't put down the $475 per component until you've been through Jumpstart.
Okay, so you just register, pay the $75, and then you can go back in after you decide which ones to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's our recommendation.
That's a great recommendation.
Yeah. Good questions.
The state is offering one new brand thing, and Nikki alluded to it just a little bit at the beginning. Washington State runs something called Homestretch, and nationally they're working on putting together a program. I don't know that it's going to end up being called Homestretch, but the idea is that you used to try to certify all in 1 year, and so everything you learned at Jumpstart was pretty fresh in your mind. But now that people are taking 2 and 3 years to complete it, some of the feedback we were receiving is that all of those things you learn about and think about in Jumpstart kind of leave you as you start through this process. So Homestretch is going to be something that's offered, which will reconnect you throughout the process to gain additional support. So that is something the state's going to be offering as well. So just so you know, there are many systems in place to really support you.
Yeah, and I got
Within
that
Montana.
question a lot about, can we have more of these meetings, virtual meetings with people who are also going through the process? And we're thinking about it. Like we're figuring out all the ways. Some communities have quite a few ambassadors in the district that can hold meetups for people pursuing this, and so we're working on having both face-to-face meetups as well as virtual opportunities to connect and ask questions. But also one thing I did that, I don't know, Christy, if you did this too, but I emailed Marco and said, here's my certificate area and I really need some feedback on my work. And he shared email addresses and names of a couple of teachers that were willing to help. And I emailed those teachers and they were so gracious, and they read my work and gave me feedback. And one of them really helped me prepare for the test and really talked me through what the test was like. And we have a whole state full of teachers who are more than willing to do that.
Great.
Any other questions?
I had one. I'm teaching 7th and 8th grade art currently. If I did the secondary level and got certified, but say in a couple years they transferred me to the high school, would I still be good with that, or when I go to maintenance, or would I have to do it all over because I went from middle school to high school?
Let's look at that certificate area in art. So you could go the ages 3 to 12 or 11 to 18.
Yeah, I'd probably do the 11 to 18.
Yeah, and I think you'd be fine there because
Okay.
That's got both your middle and your high school.
Okay. I just didn't know if it mattered, like maintenance wise. They're like, well, you did 7, 8, but now you're 9, 10 or something. I didn't know if that mattered or not.
From what I'm hearing, Christy, is that what your understanding is too?
Yes. And you mentioned borrowing a classroom, and I actually ended up in that same situation. I had done my first 3 components, and then all of a sudden I was asked to take a job outside of a classroom for a couple of years. And so I just borrowed a coworker's group of kiddos to finish it up. So it's not ideal to need to do that, but just know that there are ways, even if you find yourself in a place you didn't expect to be at all, they have set it up so that it doesn't completely take you out of the process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And I see Allison's asking some more questions in chat. Currently, Allison, Jumpstart is only offered in the summer. And the maintenance is just coming out. I actually received an email this week explaining what it's going to look like. And I'm going to be honest that I haven't even had a chance to read it yet. It's been one of those kinds of weeks. But I do know that it's on the website. Because it's every 5 years, we're hearing it's a little cheaper than it used to be, and we're hearing that it's maybe a little less work. It's certainly not the same amount of work as your original certification. It's more just showing that you're continuing to learn and grow as a teacher. So I believe there's some writing, and I believe there's some videotaping, but nothing like this first go around.
I think, Yeah, I've been answered that question quite a bit, and there is a whole section on it on the website. I do know, I think Shelley Stanton just did her maintenance and billing a year ago. And she said a lot of it was just showing what she had done since certification and really reflected on her journey as a teacher leader. And then it wasn't too bad at all. And definitely worth it if you want to continue getting the stipends, for sure. Any other questions?